The rich and powerful want us to think the economy is a line on a stock market ticker. That's wrong. The economy is powered by us. It's what we create, what we buy, what we need. President Biden has proposed bold public investments in jobs and families, but more is needed. We need housing, healthcare, caregiving, action on the climate crisis, and millions of good-paying jobs. This is our moment to finally unlock prosperity for all of us. For more information, go to prosperus.org. That's prosperus.org. The rich and powerful want us to think the economy is a line on a stock market ticker. That's wrong. The economy is powered by us. It's what we create, what we buy, what we need. President Biden has proposed bold public investments in jobs and families, but more is needed. We need housing, healthcare, caregiving, action on the climate crisis, and millions of good-paying jobs. This is our moment to finally unlock prosperity for all of us. For more information, go to prosperus.org. That's prosperus.org.
You're tuned to the Bill Riley Show from the My Buddy the Plumber studios of ESPN 700. Let's get back out to Bill on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700.
All right, coming up top of the hour, you'll hear from Kyle Whittingham as they're entering their stretch run of spring football. Spring football game coming up in, do the math real fast here, 11 days. On the 17th, right here on ESPN 700. We'll have it for you. 6,500 fans should be on hand to look at Rice Eccles Stadium and see what's going on. Our spring football coverage brought to you by our friends at Valley Collision. So we'll let you hear from Kyle Whittingham. Fred Whittingham as well. Talked a little tight ends this morning, so that'll be coming up after 1 o'clock. BYU wrapped up their spring football a little while ago, and their basketball season wrapped up in the NCAA basketball tournament. Haven't talked to my guy Mitch Harper in a minute, so I thought we'd bring him on here today, kind of put a wrap on both those things. Hey, Mitch, how are you?
Doing great, Bill. Happy to be on with you again.
Good to have you on. So what'd you make of the title game last night? And the West Coast Conference representative Gonzaga coming up a little short against Baylor.
Yeah, I don't think I was surprised, honestly. I thought that Gonzaga was a team that was amazing this year, and I thought that they were fantastic with their difficult non-conference schedule. I don't think they get enough credit with how difficult their non-conference slate was. But I just think Baylor was just special. For those that were watching college basketball this year, that you knew Baylor was just a really good team. And I thought after what happened against UCLA with Gonzaga being taken all the way to the Final Horn, I thought, man, Gonzaga's not going to have much left in the tank. And clearly Baylor just outclassed Gonzaga. And I kind of wonder how Gonzaga going forward, if they can ever reclaim that dominance. Like, they're still going to be the team to beat in the WCC by a mile, by a sizable margin, but still, like, will they ever have that good of a team again? It's going to be interesting because they lose a lot, and, you know, everyone in college basketball in this era of dynamic rosters that we're in, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of change is going to happen. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for Gonzaga and the entire WCC.
I'm really curious, Mitch, to get your view on this because you cover BYU, and they kind of go through the same thing a little bit here. I do think there's something to not playing high-level competition on a regular basis. That doesn't mean Gonzaga's record or anything like that, but I think when it comes to the tournament, and people can say, well, they beat this team or that team, they didn't play a lot of high-level elite teams early in the tournament. My point is, when you don't play regular high-level elite talent like you would in a Big 12 or a Pac-12 or a Big 10 on a semi-regular basis, I think it doesn't sharpen you as much. And I think, you know, last night I think Baylor was going to be the better team regardless, but I think there's something to be said for they played a great non-conference schedule. You're right about that, but that was 3 months ago. And not, you know, playing Pacific and Pepperdine and Loyola Marymount doesn't really, to me, sharpen you up as much as if you were playing in a Power 6 conference. Do you think that hurts a program like Gonzaga and maybe even a program like BYU a little bit?
I think it does a little bit. I mean, I will say the WCC has gotten a lot better. I mean, if you're getting into the advanced analytics, like the net rankings, the WCC was probably the best mid-major conference in all of college basketball this year. They finished 7th in the total conference rankings by Ken Palm, so right outside the Power 6. They were the number 1 mid-major conference, and I think that's a byproduct, obviously, of Gonzaga. And I think all the other teams in the league are elevating their play and investing more into their basketball programs. But, yeah, I mean, no one has anywhere near the talent of a Jalen Suggs in the WCC. And, you know, it's interesting, Bill. I saw a stat last night during the game. Gonzaga in their last 20 years since they had that run with Dan Monson, and then he moved on to Minnesota and then eventually Long Beach. But Gonzaga's runs the NCAA tournament. They've only beat one team that was higher than a 3 seed in the last 20 years of the NCAA tournament. And oddly enough, that came against Utah in 2016, I think, when Utah was a 3 seed and Gonzaga was 11 seed. But that's it. They don't beat 3 seeds, 2 seeds, 1 seed. You saw UCLA. They took down 2 seed Alabama, then they took down 1 seed Michigan. Gonzaga, oddly enough, hasn't done that. And I was kind of shocked to see that stat. And I looked back to check it, and sure enough, that's it. Like, they have not beat the higher seeded teams ever during this magical 2-decade run that they had. And maybe it just raises some questions about how good Gonzaga is and that what you're talking about, the test that they get in the league, because there's just never any pressure on them. Like, they haven't lost a league game against a team not named BYU or St. Mary's since 2014. It's just like, it's insane, the kind of the metrics and the stats that Gonzaga really faces no pressure in the WCC. And you just hope that maybe the financial commitment and the resources that WCC is putting into the league, being a basketball-focused league, can have some payoff. But I do think it kind of showed itself last night against a Baylor team that was just more athletic, stronger. They look like grown men compared to Gonzaga. It was kind of eye-opening.
Well, and that's my point. That doesn't mean – and I'm not saying this to demean – I still think Gonzaga is fantastic, second-best team in college basketball. But to me, Mitch, there's something to – BYU pushed them for a half, okay, and UCLA, but UCLA didn't punch them in the mouth on Saturday night. That was a back-and-forth basketball game. Baylor came out and punched them once and twice in the mouth in that first half, and Gonzaga was stunned and didn't know how to react because, as you said, they haven't been punched in the mouth all year long. BYU, when they played with them, what did they have that one game in Provo? What was it, like an 8-point lead at halftime, maybe a 10-point halftime lead?
Yeah, it was like about an 8 to 10 point. I think it was 10-point halftime lead.
But they were never really threatened. Baylor came out and just slugged them, and then they slugged them again. And I think when you haven't been, it's that proverbial old everybody's got a game plan until you're punched in the face. And I just don't feel like, playing in the WCC, they experience that. Nobody is on their level athletically and from a player standpoint. And so when they do finally get into that game, I just thought there were times in the first half last night where they were kind of looking around, not quite knowing what to do.
Yeah, it's a good point. I will say, though, I think Baylor was probably the only team that probably would make Gonzaga feel that way. I don't think anyone else in college basketball could have done that. I thought Illinois was going to be something pretty good this
I did too,
but they got bounced early. But outside of them, I thought Baylor was probably the only one that could really suffocate this Gonzaga team. And I just wonder if they're ever going to be able to win it. Like, if anyone outside the power conferences can ever win. I mean, it's nice that there's a system in place that they can get that number 1 overall seed and get a shot, but this definitely doesn't help the teams outside the power conferences when they get to that final stage and then they just get handled the way they did. Like, it wasn't even competitive. When they got down to about 9 points in the second half and then Baylor just instantly popped off 2 threes and jumped it back up to 15. It's like, that's game, that's a wrap. And Gonzaga just never had any answers, and Timmy was hurt, and just everything went sideways. I would even say, too, Kispert, I was thinking to myself, how is that guy a first-team All-American? He looked completely outclassed last night in that game. So, yeah, just not a great night for Gonzaga, but they're still going to probably be head and shoulders the best team in the WCC next year. But I just don't know if they're ever going to be like they were this year, how good and how dominant they were. It's going to be tough to get back to that mountaintop once again.
Mitch Harper with us here on the Bill Riley Show today, BYU insider from KSLSports.com. So tell me about BYU next year. Obviously, there's a chance to bring some guys back. I'm curious. I thought it was a great job this year because they pieced that team together. I thought the team a year ago was really talented. Could have been a second weekend team. But you tell me. I'm just curious what your expectation and how this BYU team for next year is coming together.
I think next year it's going to be interesting. BYU's going to wait on some answers from Matt Harms and Alex Barcelo. And really, after the loss to UCLA in the NCAA tournament, Matt Harms said in the press conference podium at the NCAA tournament, he's like, that was my last game. I'm done. I'm moving on. And he said all throughout the entire year, this will be his one and only year. He's not going to use the blanket waiver from the NCAA. He wants to move on. But as of late, he's kind of contemplating his decision to come back. And he's going to have to get more physical. And I think he's realizing that the NBA is not waiting for him right now. Maybe if another year under Chris Burgess and Mark Pope, he could develop into an NBA big. But physically, He hasn't shown that physicality, maybe kind of validated Matt Painter at Purdue of some of the questions that he did have about harm. So he needs another year to come back. If he did, that'd be a huge boost for BYU. And Alex Barcelo, an honorable mention All-American, they desperately need him back, in my opinion, because the guard line for BYU next year is pretty much non-existent. You just don't have many guards on the roster. Pope and this staff have done a great job in improving the size and getting a bunch of 6'9", 6'10", even some 7-footers in the program. But they've kind of struggled a little bit in recruiting some guards. So if they could get Alex Barcelo back to come back for one more year, I think that would be a huge boost as well. But they're going to be active in the transfer portal. I mean, one thing that Mark Pope has shown is that BYU is going to be a player at a national level in the portal, like getting Harms, getting Barcelo. Those have been big additions in the past few years, and I think BYU will definitely have their name in the mix for some talented transfers once again.
All right, before I let you go, what was the big takeaway from spring football with Kalani Sitake and his team?
I think the big takeaway for me, Bill, is that I don't think they're any closer to making a decision on the quarterback. I really thought that going into spring ball, they would probably have it, one or two guys that would be head and shoulders above everyone else. It's still pretty much a three-man race with Jaron Hall, Baylor Romney, and Jacob Conover, the freshman. I think that this is going to be a deal at quarterback that's going to play out probably up until kickoff. Going to probably take a page from his mentor and Kyle Whittingham and probably keep the starting quarterback decision close to the vest until they face Arizona in Vegas on September 4th. So that, to me, was the biggest takeaway from a spring ball, that it really lacked many storylines to begin with.
Yeah, the Utah spring has not got a lot of storylines either. However, the big storyline is the quarterback spot, and that's Charlie Brewer, and he's kind of doing exactly what they had hoped to do. But outside of that, that's what I always say, though. I mean, you don't want a lot of major storylines coming out of spring football. That usually means somebody got hurt or something went badly wrong. You usually want spring football to be pretty low-key and set up some storylines for fall camp.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And, the big thing that's going to be interesting for BYU, too, is, and I asked Kalani about this, because I really think the Pac-12 is going to be much improved, one of the better leagues in college football next year. You just look at all the returning production, the 5 teams that BYU faces from the Pac-12 conference this year, all of them have at least 80% of their production returning this year, whereas BYU, they got less than 50% of their production returning. How big of an impact is that going to have? I mean, Arizona State, they only played about 4 games. Utah, 5 games. I mean, how much of an impact really was, that all that returning production when it was such a small sample size a year ago? But still, you bring back so much returning, it's going to be a tough challenge, I think, for BYU. So they got to get some answers maybe in this summer conditioning and then early on in fall camp as they get ready for a schedule that's going to have 7 Power 5s this year.
They're obviously losing some key talent on the offensive line. Are they going to be able to reload?
I think so. I think, at right left tackle, they're going to have Blake Freeland probably be the guy that starts there. He's a 6'8", big offensive lineman. He's really developed into that spot, was a former skill player in high school. And then Harris LaChance, his high school teammate, Blake Freeland, going to probably handle that right tackle spot. And then James Empey returns at the center position. He could be potentially an All-American. So I think BYU feels good about the offensive line. I think the biggest question, honestly, on that offense is quarterback. And I think the additions of Puka Nacua and Samson Nacua are huge at wide receiver for BYU, because whoever takes over that quarterback job, they're going to have some weapons to throw to and also hand the ball off to with Tyler Algier, a 1,000-yard runner from a season ago.
Yeah, the Nacua's immediately upgraded that wide receiver room big time. Hey, Mitch, thanks as always. Talk to you soon.
Hey, take care, Bill.
Thank you, Mitch. Mitch Harper with us here on the Bill Riley Show, BYU Insider with KSLSports.com in front of the program.
Hey, parents, did you know your kids' money habits start as early as the 2nd grade? Help them build money skills for the real world with GoHenry, the debit card and financial learning app for kids 6 to 18. Use it to check off chores, set savings goals, automate allowance, and more. Families love it. 92% of parents said their kids were more money confident after using the app. Get started at GoHenry.com, promo code SMART.
The rich and powerful want us to think the economy is a line on a stock market ticker. That's wrong. The economy is powered by us. It's what we create, what we buy, what we need. President Biden has proposed bold public investments in jobs and families, but more is needed. We need housing, healthcare, caregiving, action on the climate crisis, and millions of good-paying jobs. This is our moment to finally unlock prosperity for all of us. For more information, go to prosperus.org. That's prosperus.org.